Hello YouTube, Kemo Sabi here, coming at you with another video. Hopefully you're all doing real good. This one's off of Digg webpage. So, the history of trans fat, with the topic, what better than this? Written up by Seth Millstein, timeline, and posted on June 18th, 2015. So, trans unsaturated fatty acid, or trans fat, are on the way out. The FDA has deemed trans fat unsafe for human consumption and ruled that food makers must stop using it within 3 years. It is generally accepted that trans fat, known as particularly hydrogenated oil in its manufactured form, is very bad for you, increasing the risk of heart disease and contributing to thousands of deaths a year. But it wasn't always so. Trans fat was initially marketed as a cheap alternative to butter, and by the 1980s activists were touting its supposed health benefits. So how did trans fat go from savior to scoundrel? 1902, making fat hard, Germany. Wilhelm Norman discovered how to convert liquid fat into firmer, semi-solid fat through the process of hydrogenation. This new product, which we now call trans fat, was less susceptible to spoilage and could therefore extend the shelf life of fat-based foods. When filing a patent for its discovery in 1902, Norman called it process of the conversion of unsaturated fatty acids or glycerides into saturated compounds. In popular lingo, it's known by a shorter, more unpleasant nickname, fat hardening. 1911, Cisco, the first trans fat product, hits the market. England. A British firm acquired the rights to Norman's process in the 1907 approached Procter & Gamble with a potential business deal. 4 years later, after refining the process and filing several more relevant patents, Procter & Gamble released Cisco, a vegetable shortening made by hydrogenating cottonseed oil. The name Cisco is an abbreviation of crystallized cottonseed oil, P&G, touted it as cheaper, longer-lasting butter replacement, and distributed free cookbooks featuring Cisco recipes to incentivize early adoption. Cisco was the first manufactured food product to contain trans fat, and it was a huge success, selling 2.6 million pounds the year after it was released and 60 million a year by 1916. Here's an old picture of a 3-pound Cisco can of this trans fat. (1943) Support our troops. Eat trans fat. United States. Butter is largely fat. Fat is required to make glycerin, and glycerin is used to make explosives. Fat and butter thus became hot commodities during World War II, and the U.S. government rationed both of them to keep weapon protection at significant levels. In lieu of butter, many Americans started using margarine during this period. Margarine was increasingly being made with hydrogenated vegetable oils as opposed to beef fat, and so the spike in margarine consumption inadvertently led to an increase in trans fat consumption in the U.S. Here we have an old school picture of this kind of butter in a box. (1984) Trading one fat for another. United States. The appeal of trans fat wasn't purely economic. For a period of time, health experts actually thought it was good for you. In the 1980s, studies emerged linking saturated fat to heart disease and other health problems. Two public advocacy groups, the Center for Science and the Public Interest and the National Heart Savers Organization, began pressuring restaurants to stop or limit their use of saturated fats. These activists encouraged food makers to replace saturated fats with the next best alternative, trans fat. Burger King made the switch in 1986, and many others soon followed suit. 2006, trans fat became the new boogeyman. New York City. In the early 1990s, a growing body of research started showing that trans fat was worse for humans than saturated fat. One Harvard study found that consuming high amounts of trans fat doubled the risk of a heart attack. Groups that have advocated trans fat for a decade earlier began warning of its dangers. The Center of Science and the Public Interest had called trans fat a great boon to Americans' arteries. In 1986, it was now calling on the Food and Drug Administration to require trans fat content to be listed on food labels. The FDA implemented the rule in 2006, and New York City became the first U.S. city to ban trans fat in restaurants. 2015, FDA bans trans fat. Silver Swing MD, with further studies showing that trans fat kills an estimated 3,000 to 7,000 people a year via coronary heart disease, anti-trans fat movement gains steam. The U.S. State's Department of Agriculture placed limits on the use of trans fat in school lunches in 2012. Now the FDA has banned food manufacturers from using trans fat, citing evidence that it's no longer generally recognized as safe under any condition of use in human food. The ruling, which gives companies 3 years to phase out trans fat uses, was cheered by proponents of good health and responsible eating. But given how quickly the tide can turn, who knows, maybe one day we'll be told they're good for us again. So there you have it, everybody. And then there's one more webpage with just a few other paragraphs that I'll add to it. This one's off of News Medical web page, written up by Yolanda Smith, BPharm. Also correlated to trans fat history. So here you have it. Trans fat is produced in a chemical reaction of hydrogenation that was first discovered at the end of the 19th century and became more widely used over the following years. More recently, health concerns associated with the consumption of trans fat has become evidence promoting food manufacturers to formulate products that contain trans fats. Development of hydrogenated fat. Paul Shabater was a scientist who investigated chemical reaction by hydrogenation to create the fats that form a base of products such as margarine. He focused primarily on the hydrogenation of vapors, but was the first to record the process to create fats that were known as trans fats. This concept was built upon by William Norma Moll, who was a German chemist, that showed liquid oils could be hydrogenated to change their physical properties. He patented the process in 1902 and went on to build the Hereford company that produced hardened fats. Joseph Craftsfield and Sons Lid expanded the process to a large-scale production plant in England and commenced production of hydrogenated fats in 1909. At this time, Procter and Gamble acquired patent rights in the U.S. and released the first hydrogenated shortening product, Cisco. In 1911, this product was created from cottonseed oil that had undergone hydrogenation to become semi-solid at room temperature. It made a remarkably successful entry in the market with the introduction of free cookbooks that included recipes that informally required Cisco as an ingredient. Promotion of hydrogenated fats. Hydrogenated fats were recognized for the unique properties that made their use more convenient, such as the immediate spreading of margarine after removal from the refrigerator in comparison to the hardness of butter. This was used as a promotional point for marketing campaigns, as well as the superior properties for the use in baking compared to lard. A gradual trend to preference for hydrogenated fat product was in swing in 1920 across many food industries, including baking of bread, pies, and cakes. This continued until the 1960s, with processed vegetable fats becoming increasingly more popular than animal fats. This was in part due to the low cost of production and purchase, but also there was believed to be health benefits associated with unsaturated fats. Safety concerns of trans fat. The first evidence of concern about the safety of trans fat present in hydrogenated fat emerged in the 1980s, which suggested an increased risk of coronary heart disease. This led to further research on the subject, and estimated in 1994 indicated that consumption of trans fat were likely to cause 30,000 deaths each year in the United States alone. Health activists have since largely condemned trans fat, and government regulations has been introduced to minimize the production of trans fats. Food industries were greatly affected by these changes and public demands for healthier food fats and food products. Many manufacturers, including the original U.S. product Cisco by Procter and Gamble, needed to reformulate the production process. A website, bantransfat.com, was involved in a lawsuit against Kraft for the content of trans fat in Oreo cookies, which was eventually withdrawn due to the promise by the company that changes would be made. Additionally, major food chains were required to alter the fats used to their cooking processes to minimize the use of trans fats. KFC was also involved in a lawsuit that prompted them to substitute trans fat in their cooking process for healthier options. Other chains, including Burger King, McDonald's, Taco Bell, and Wendy's, also made changes to the way their food products were prepared. So there you have it, everybody. A little bit of interesting information about trans fats. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Hit me up with a comment. I always reply to everybody's comments pretty quickly. And if you feel inclined to share the video, then do so. And we'll see you in the next one. Kemo, Sabi out. Thanks, everybody.